research, you will find photographs from the European theater of these type of craft as far back as 1918. Now, we all know the Germans didn't come into power until 1933, and their first experiments with smaller models or remote control models didn't begin until 1935, and until 1939 and 1940 became the bigger models. So they simply replicated what they were seeing in the European skies during the many different conflicts. During World War I, UFOs were sighted. World War II, innumerable UFOs were sighted. Our wars in the Middle East, wherever we have hot flashpoints of aggression, we often find extraterrestrials watching us to see how we behave and what we do. And so, for those who watch them, they say, wow, let's see if we can replicate it. So the easiest thing to replicate is first the outside. So you replicate the hull, even though it's not 100% replication. But the Germans could not replicate the electromagnetic free propulsion system. They had rotor blades on the bottom, they had gun turrets on the bottom, and these vehicles did not fly successfully anywhere near to the extent of the maneuverability of this. And so that accusation, while it got a lot of motion, really didn't have anything to substantiate that. The next one was that Stalin wanted to scare the dickens out of us, and so he went out and recruited a bunch of midgets and then built these crafts, and they came over here to scare us. Well, you can determine for yourself whether you like that one or not. Another thing that I find interesting, of course, is all the hoopla, of course, whether we went to the moon or not. And anyone who does this much research can find the films, can find the pictures. I have the originals, some with me, some of them in the vault. You can see the orbit of the Earth, the LEM, the lunar orbiter, as it comes around the horizon. All things which you cannot duplicate unless you really know what it looks like to begin with. You had to go there to find out. And so I can sympathize with astronaut Aldrin when somebody confronted him with that and he offered him a knuckle sandwich. Because it took a great amount of courage and a great amount of fortitude to strap yourself to this controlled explosion. If any of you remember, and I remember those days, I grew up in the astronaut area. Boy, we emulated them. We ran around in Halloween masks like them. We all wanted to be astronauts, and we still do to this day. And so if you watch the earlier experiments of these rockets, more of them blew up on the pad than went into space. And another half of them blew up on them before they got, 10,000 feet in the air. So we have to give our astronauts a great amount of credit for the courage to strap themselves on this explosive experiment and risk their lives to go into space. And so I found that it is far easier, once again, to make accusations and create controversy than to stand up for it and back it up. And so that gave me some concern as well. And there's a number of other aspects to the history that have been convoluted and redirected so that not so much many of our generation that are here, but the newer generations will have no connection to this, and they will just simply accept what is given to them over the internet or over the computer or Wikipedia. If I have gone into Wikipedia on George Adamski, and they list all kinds of negative things. And so I said, okay, there's supposed to be a balanced forum. So I offered some of my friends to sign up for it to gain access, because they claim that if you gain access and supply information in any one of their forums that you can supply references for, they will include it. Well, I got news for you. All three of them did exactly that. And within 24 hours, every one of their comments were wiped clean. So now my attorneys will have a field day when it comes to it, because they're going to go after them. So the idea here is that there is a concentrated effort to push back the past, to push back legitimate contact, and more importantly, to push back your recognition of what that contact really means to you and really means to the progression of this planet. When you understand that more than anything else, we will do anything to keep secret the fact that there is intelligent life in your solar system, you will understand why. You do not spend 3 decades denying something exists with all your heart and energy from top to bottom and trying to convince and to intimidate people about this, and then go into a space program and tell the people, well, we were really pulling your leg back there because we went out here into space and we found a whole heck of a lot of life. Because then you're going to say to yourself, my God, what do we have for leaders? What are they doing to us? And the second thing you will want to know is, since you have intelligent life near you, it now becomes obtainable. It's not in some far distant solar system, in some far distant galaxy. George said many times, oh, my life could have been so much easier if I was willing to alter my story and say that I didn't have contact with people in this solar system, but rather in another solar system. Everybody would have left me alone because we don't have the means to go there to prove it or disprove it. But he was not going to change his story, and the contact stood before him and communicated with him and showed him the proof of who and what they were. And so this we will try to defend at all costs, but yet layer by layer we peel it away. Life exists beyond this planet. We see that it can come up about on the moon in the environment. We start to go towards Mars and it starts to get better. And sooner or later, we will eventually probably admit to this, but I do not believe it will be in your lifetimes. Because the only way that we were going to admit is if we can make it a threat. Because that way we can maintain the status quo of how we operate on this world. And we operate based upon a military-industrial economy where we produce weapons, we go research and development towards the productions of aggressive instrumentation, and we then need to use it. So we instigate hotspots around the world. So we are not the promoters of peace we would like to believe we are. We are the promoters of aggression because we want to hold on to a system of life and a lifestyle that we have. And while the people who govern us are responsible for this, each and every one of us who are sitting and standing in this room are also responsible. We have 401ks, we have retirement funds, we have investments. And if we would invest our money, shall we say, principally, and say we're not going to put money in what makes us the quickest amount of money or the most amount of money, we're going to put it in where we believe is the most progressive towards this world, then we would see the change that we were hoping for. So let us also be responsible. So I look forward to the question and answer period because this is one of my favorite parts, even though it puts me on the hot seat. And I hope that you have plenty of questions when we get to that part. But in a total overview, I want people to understand that this bleak future that we constantly promote, we promote a destructive Armageddon at the very least, or a type of Terminator future which is horrendous in its concept. We are constantly bombarded by these thoughts and by this type of media. In fact, a very good book is called Hollywood versus the Alien, in which the author discusses this type of mental bombardment through science fiction and through various other avenues so that it becomes more and more acceptable. And once anything, like the old saying goes, you tell a lie, tell it big enough and tell it long enough, and people will come to accept it. All right? And so we need to realize, and I will show you a couple of slides of where our future we were capable of already in the 70s, that we are selling ourselves incredibly short. The technology that you use today was developed 25, 30 years ago. What is available today in some circles you won't see for another 25, 30 years. So you see a managed, slow, manipulated continuum. And we are far greater than that and far better than that. And if we would go into space, instead of, and we're responsible once again, NASA's budget gets cut further and further and further. We have data that's in warehouses full, as full as this room, with the readers sold, nobody even knows how to use them anymore. We do not believe that by pushing into a space industry, we can change the nature of this planet. But that's exactly what it's there for. For every dollar spent going to space is almost a $4 return. But people aren't told that. People aren't told that the research going into space has brought you computers and microchips and crystals that are grown towards perfection, medical advances, the downstream benefits just of what you have acquired from the space program is phenomenal. And that is only a small percentage of what we're capable of. So this future that I speak about is not altruistic. It's not some utopia that's off into the future in some science fiction dream. It is what we are capable of today. And I think that once you recognize that, we will start to change a little bit of our outlook and our pessimism of what comes down the road. We need to be hopeful. Everybody knows you carry a positive thought, you get positive energy. Well, that's what we're practicing, hopefully. And if we put this in motion, we can have the future and we can have the now, the reality that we deserve. Let's take a look at some film. Well, we were supposed to have film. Let's see if we can get the tech. I touched it, as you said.
You gotta click on this.
Yeah. Do we need the lights for it on, or should we keep the lights on?
If you would like them.
That's fine. That looks okay. Here's a picture of George as I remember him. This is taken in Vista area near the Lado de Loma Drive, up on the top of the hill, which was his latter property. This craft is at regular speed moving by that house behind the power lines. It's a saucer-shaped craft with most of the propulsion system turned down low. Here is its half speed to give you a better idea of the view of this, the maneuverability. I had one astronaut on a MUFON lecture a couple months ago in Orange County ask me a question, a shuttle pilot, why do they move what we call erratically? And I mentioned to him the fact that aerodynamics doesn't apply to them the same way. This is a picture of a newer type of craft. The bell-shaped craft is a very old historical craft that they came with for reasons to remind us in our historical record. But this particular lenticular craft is capable of interplanetary travel without the carrier craft. This is taken in Wisconsin. And if this craft's maneuverability for both towards you and then moving backwards and then sideways, dipping, these type of films astounded the military. Still some of the best in civilian hands. Completely different place, completely different environment. This is half speed. These craft can range anywhere from the smallest of about 33 feet, the largest of the bell-shaped probably about 120 feet. The cigar-shaped craft from about 1,000 feet is their smallest to about 20 miles. This is theirs. There's a difference between ours. We'll discuss that. This is taken in Boston. This is a smaller, what you call registering disc, or what George referred to as a registering disc. This is a remote control device, very much like we have ROVs that we use in submersibles that go down and do some of the investigation for us. A registering disc is there to collect information as well. If we were going to use a science term for it, we would call it a probe. And it shows you, once again, it works on free energy, in which there are about 1,200 lines per square centimeter. And through that magnetism, they propel themselves quite sufficiently past the speed of light. And George made that claim that they could go as fast as the speed of magnetism, which is twice the speed of light. And everybody said, well, that's impossible. According to Einstein, you can't do that. And if we're well read, we know about 6 months ago, we actually admitted to the fact that acceleration past the speed of light is attainable. In fact, we've simulated it. So over the many decades, the information that was given to George about space, its conditions, all have come full circle to be validated. And he's probably the only one I know that has given such a plethora of information that was really sought out and has provided true interaction at all levels. This is in Silver Springs. And what you're going to see here is that in a later footage, prior to the larger craft coming down, the registering disc comes down here between the trees and measures the distance. And this information was later uplinked to the computer of the larger craft, so that the craft could come down and do that maneuvering within that tight space near the camera in order to be filmed successively. You'll see here, of course, you've got 8mm film that's all old. This comes from the 50s and 60s, so the restoration is in the process. This is the craft that came down later, and you can see by these still shots that are this last surviving stills from the original movie. You can see the portholes, you can see the condenser, the ball on the bottom will move up and down. You will see a short clip of that on film, that the only portion that survives is a piece of a copy. But these original frames here we have at the foundation, and we put out there so you can see that, how that craft looks like, with most of its power turned down so that you can see the craft. When the power is fully operational, then you will see nothing but a surrounding pearlescent type of a cloud. Here you go with the section that comes in here with the registering disc. Also a different day, different environmental conditions. There were actually 3 pieces to this film. This is the piece that you will see. You just caught the lip of the house over the top. And then you have the craft that comes in here. Now it looks flat because as you copy of copies and copies, then you don't get the 3-dimensionality that the original frame showed you. You could see the portholes on the original frames. You could see much more the 3-dimensional of the flange underneath. The full sequence as it came and then started over the top of the house and then went right over the top of your head. This is the location in Silver Springs where we used to stay with Madeline and George. That's where that film was taken. This craft is between the mailbox and the front porch, so you can see the distance is very close. And as I went through archival photographs and films, I came across a section here that my father took when ABC News came out after the film was released. So all their reporters came out and set up, and so you got a little bit of historical perspective here that, since we didn't have video machines in those days, so we're just television cameras, so whatever you could take on your own is what you got. And that's Madeline, that's her house there. She was one of the original co-workers as well. I come from an era where this is a very real subject. It was treated very seriously. The American intelligence community had a car parked down at the bottom of the driveway 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they changed shift every 8 hours. My father and I would go down there. He'd say, "Come on, Glenn, let's go down there and bring them some coffee." And so we go down there and thump on the roof, and both of them nearly jump out of their seat. And then one night he says to me, "Come on, I'm going to show you something." And so he takes a flashlight, and we walk to the bottom of the driveway, the cul-de-sac. The intelligence car's parked about, I'd say 5-10 meters in front of us, and he takes flashlight, points it in the air, and shoots off a series of sequences. Crystal clear night, no clouds. This is a copy of a painting that was given to George by his extraterrestrial friends. These are some of the diagrams and drawings that having to do with the magnetism that we have recovered and we're trying to reproduce again from film back into its original state. As I mentioned, we flashed the light into the sky. Within about 10 seconds, the same sequence came down and lit up the entire road. And that car, boy, they jumped and took off with 200, and we never saw those agents again. So, interesting times. This particular film sequence was taken in Mexico, and there's something that